Hi, I just wanted to give a little brief introduction to the Dead City. I've noticed on John Doyle poems that on YouTube that people like the short ones, and that's fine, but the long ones don't seem to attract as many ratings as the others. And I don't know if this is because obviously people have got less time, and a quick poem is easier to read. So I thought maybe it's best if I explain a little bit of what the Dead Sea is about, and then maybe that will cause some interest and people will start reading the different parts. It's 35 parts, and now that I've got director's count, I won't have to chop the longer ones up, because before I had to do that with a night collection. What it's basically about is it's a bit like, I suppose, if you like H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, or John Wyndham's Day of the Triffids, or the film 28 Days Later, which was borrowed a little bit the plots from those two, or was very similar to those two, that kind of vein, then you should like this. It's basically that type of vein where it's one main character who wakes up, and there's this fog that's descended upon the city. He doesn't know how it happened, he doesn't know how he's there. He's been living on the streets for some time, since the death of, I think it was his wife. Yeah, it's his wife, yeah. And so he wakes up to this fog in the city, and the landscape's changed, and there's no one about, everything's stopped, life has ceased, as it were. And so then he has to start walking around, and he has to look around this dead city. A sense of fear came across me, for as someone who had wandered these streets, they had become like a man and his home. I knew every corner, every little crevice, and yet this landscape now seemed alien to me. Where were all the obstacles that should be in my way? And it was then, as I reached the end of the fog, high up I could see down upon the city. There was nothing to be seen. Nothing. So the reason I liked it is because I liked stories like The War of the Worlds and Day of the Triffids. And I think when I wrote Night Collection, which started as a ghost story, as it went on, it went into that type of story where it's a man walking around a deserted London. I like that type of scenario, because it's quite interesting to write about, and you can explore other topics, and it gives you freedom to not have to bother with other bits of reality that get in the way. So he's wandering around, and as he does so, he goes to different places. There's a place, another city actually, where the Scraggs live, and they are sort of a bit like, I suppose if you wanted to parallel, a bit like H.G. Wells' Island of Dr. Moreau, where they're doing experiments, and they've survival's come more instinctual over morality, and that's a bit like what it's like with the Scraggs. They will eat each other, they become cannibals in order to survive, because they haven't got the food anymore. I thought you were hungry. Like it? I said yes. Then he took me around the corner, and on the floor of the side of the kitchen lay a pile of dead bodies, with a silver knife stuck in them. I looked again and noticed that it looked as if the knife had been used to pull off the meat from the bones of these dead human beings. And then it struck me as I looked back at my plate. I rushed to the stove where the pan was boiling and took a look inside it, and there I saw human remains. It's all minced up. You wouldn't tell otherwise. We don't show everyone else. They'd starve. There's also, with this fog, there's it's carrying a genetic disease. There was a base that were doing tests, and this is well, there's a little bit of a spoiler in a way, that give how the fog came about and how the whole Dead City idea came about. Is there was a base, military base, that were testing a genetic weapon for warfare, and this genetic weapon would only attack a certain genetic disposition. So obviously it's based on the idea that if there was a war between different races, which generally they are anyway, like with the Second World War or in modern time wars, then this genetic warfare, germ warfare, would be used rather than military technology that is now. Obviously that would be cheaper and it would be more effective because it would only kill those people it had the genetic disposition of. Which is, yes, obviously not everyone, but in war, unfortunately, that's the same kind of mind frame that's used now. It doesn't matter who's killed, obviously they target certain people, but I can see that type of thing happening. Now, while they're testing this, a man called Harkin, he's controlling some other area outside where there's a glass wall and everything's shut off. While they're testing it, he's noticed he's won the lottery. And this, he's amazed. He's won all this money. His life has changed. He can be happy, etc. And while he's doing that, he forgets a normal selection of buttons he has to press. Now, it's not too clear how it really happened, whether it was to do with what he did or whether it was something that went wrong. And he was supposed to. I think it's something that went wrong, and he was meant to do a certain code of buttons, which would have, normally he could do because he's won the lottery. His mind frame is not there anymore. This is the whole idea in the poem, sort of attacking the idea that people who put money above everything else, which is a general disposition of society at the moment, and one thing I don't like. So obviously he does that, and whatever he does doesn't work out, and they start, the germ warfare starts to attack them, and eventually he runs, he's scared, he runs and he flies off, and then he sees, I think he describes later when he's talking to James Bishop, the main character, and he was walking around the dead city, that he saw the explosion, and then obviously that fog has then descended across the city and beyond. Now the problem is they were only testing this genetic warfare, and they hadn't yet given the chemical warfare, or whatever it is, the radiation, whatever you want to call it, they hadn't given it the genetic codings yet. So it's basically going to kill anything with any genetic coding. And Tarkin explains that there's different ways they can die. Some people die instantly, some people die gradually over a period of time, and I think I got a little bit of that from watching I think it was the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that explained in great detail a lot of that. I think I used a little bit there in the latter part of the Dead City, in this idea of the different way they could die. And obviously everyone has breathed it in their lungs, and it started working. So they don't know, James got it, Harkin's got it, they don't know how it's going to affect them. Obviously they haven't died straight away, which some people have. I think that's also based on how good people's genetic codings are and which genetic coding they've got, and that's how it happens in different ways. Anyway, that will affect them different ways. We don't know how it's going to as it goes on.